They started 11-4, but since have only won 3 of their last 13 games, and thus today the Nets have made a coaching change. They have fired Avery Johnson after a 14-14 start, where they are now at the bottom of the Eastern Conference playoff standings. For more, let's welcome in ESPN NBA insider Chris Broussard. Why today, Chris?
Well, this is a team that everyone knows had very high expectations coming into this season. They actually were talking about, contending for a trip to the NBA Finals. And obviously they've fallen very short of that, particularly in the month of December after a hot start in November. So they wanted to get something done where they still had a chance to turn it around. And obviously it's still very early in the season. And they felt like if we make a move now, and the new coach or the interim right now, PJ Carlesimo, can turn things around, we still have a chance to really, finish with home court advantage in the playoffs and fulfill our potential. One thing that was bothering them recently with the losses was that they were doing so many changes. Avery Johnson was changing the lineup. And that they felt like he was kind of grasping at straws. He's changing the starting lineup. Even against Boston, on Christmas Day, he started small, even though they had success against Boston by going big and beating them in the first 2 meetings. And then when that didn't work in the second half, he went back to a big lineup with Reggie Evans starting at power forward. So scrapping the offense, he had been talked about changes as much as 40% of the offense. They felt like, it was kind of getting confusing and that Avery was kind of just searching and groping for answers, and that was not a good sign. So that's why they decided to make the move now.
Of the 3 wins over the last 13, Toronto, Detroit, and Philadelphia are the only teams that they've beaten over that stretch. They had trouble really here. A number of our analysts, Chris, have had trouble here getting Deron Williams or Joe Johnson in rhythm. Here they are with this all-star backcourt. It's not working out so far. Do you get a sense that the players were vying for this change?
Well, I know that their locker room, they've had a lot of turmoil in the locker room. There are some players. We know Deron Williams came out, and I don't want to put this on him, but we know last week he came out and said that, he's a system guy and that Avery's offense really wasn't working for him and wasn't the offense for him. This is their superstar. This is the guy on all their billboards, on all their commercials, the guy that they just paid $100 million to usher in the new era in Brooklyn. And a coach can never win that battle, particularly when the coach is in the last year of his contract and the players in the first year of his long-term contract. But there were other players that felt that way, but there were several players who had Avery's back, who really had a lot of faith in him, who did not like the fact that Deron had come out and made those comments. The locker room was in turmoil. It was almost divided. I know Joe Johnson. I know Jerry Stackhouse, Gerald Wallace. These are guys that, believed in Avery and his system. And then there were some of the guys that were having their doubts because, again, they were making so many changes. So I think it was a locker room. It wasn't the organization over these past 2 weeks. They really had a lot of turmoil in the locker room and obviously on the court.
Lackluster on Christmas Day, then lost by 15 to the Bucks, and that's the end of the reign of Avery Johnson. 14-14 are the Nets. They are making a change. That's ESPN's Chris Broussard.